Thank you very much for listening to this week's talk on the Sedra that we read of Lech Lecha. And don't know why, but this is a very deep and heartfelt thank you, because although as we read, we reread the stories in the book of Bereshis, and they are extremely exciting, but they're stories that we have grown up with. And sometimes you think there can't possibly be any new insights, and I'll just go over what I already know. But in thinking about the themes in this week's Edra and about this talk, I was just absolutely blown away by an insight that was shared on one of the shiurim that I was listening to, and I am really excited to share that with you. But before we get to that, I just want to start with the praise that we're going to give to Avraham Avinu. We call him Avraham Avinu, but he is referred to in this week's Edra as Av Hamon Goyim. He is Avraham, our father, but he is also the father of many nations. And the monotheistic religions, notably Christianity and Islam, they also consider Abraham their father, perhaps a more universal figure than Yitzchak and Yaakov, who are considered particularly our fathers, the Jewish people's fathers. But Abraham has this broad quality and appeal, and he is known as the father of many nations. And if we think about the personality of Avraham Avinu, the things that we read about him in the psukim, in the verses of the Torah, and also the way the medrash, the way the rabbis will expound on certain allusions in the text, or perhaps sometimes even certain details that are omitted, and they flesh out this picture to become much deeper and more vibrant, so we can really get an idea, an appreciation of Avraham Avinu. He is the first Ivri. He is the person. This is translated, which is called Avraham of HaIvri, and this is the origin of the word Hebrew. And this is a way of thinking about Avraham as somebody from the other side. Aver means on the side, from the other side, and he came from the other side of the river, the Euphrates, but he was also on the other side in the metaphorical sense of being swimming against the tide of the time, even though we have left the Sedra of Noah behind and the waters of the floods of Noah, but there are other floods, and Avraham Avinu is swimming against the tide of immorality, the tide of idol worship that engulfs his time period. Not only his time period, we could actually argue that the tide of idol worship continues to swirl around all of us at all times in history. We're always fighting that the outer form of the idols might change, what we worship might look different, but actually we have that challenge before us at all times. So he is Avraham HaIvri. He is the first one to stand up and have this deep-rooted belief in the one God, the one true God, the Creator, who continues to create on an ongoing basis. So that is one first of Avraham Avinu. The next concept of the first of Avraham Avinu is that he is the first outreach worker, if you like. He has this belief, and he has come to this belief after a journey, as we all must do, wherever we're born and raised, and whatever experiences we have to always come to the conclusions at our deepest point through our own personal journey. And Avraham Avinu comes to this conclusion, but in contrast perhaps to earlier figures that we read about in the Torah, Avraham Avinu is the first outreach worker, the original kiruv person, and he absorbs the reality of Hashem. He absorbs the necessity of living a moral life in accordance with the precepts of Hashem, But he doesn't keep that to himself. He wants to share this discovery of his, and he wants to enrich the lives of everybody around him in so doing. And this is his passion, which he shares with his wife, Avram. He's originally referred to as Avram, and his wife, that we know as Sarah, is originally referred to as Sarai. At the beginning of the Sedra of Lech Lecha, their names have not yet been changed. So they are the first outreach workers. The third first, and this is something that features very prominently in this week's Sedra, he is the first Oleh. He is the first Oleh Chadash to the land of Israel. And the Sedra opens, I will read the Pesukim, with Vayomer Hashem el Avram, Lech Lecha me'artzecha u'mimoladetecha u'mibeis avicha. And Hashem says to Avram, go for yourself from your land and from your birthplace and from the house of your father to the land that I will show you. And this is the original Aliyah mission. And the commentators, the rabbis, the Gemara, are very clear about the centrality of the land of Israel in the founding, in the nation that Avraham Avinu is going to be founding. And it carries on in chapter 12, verse 2. And I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be for a blessing. And this is only going to happen in the land of Israel. And a bit later on in the Sedra, we find, as if that hasn't been spelled out to us clearly enough, in chapter 17, verse 9, Vayomer Elohim el Avraham, his name has already been changed at this point, and God says to Avraham, Va'ata esbrisi sishma, and you will keep my covenant, Ata v'zaracha acharecha ledorasam, you and your seed after you for generations. Zos brisi asher tishmeri, this is my covenant that you will tishmeru, that you will keep, beini uveinechem uvein zaracha, between me and between yourselves and between your seed. And this we see Rashi's comment that we have that the covenant is going to be established as an everlasting covenant. V'nosati, this is verse 8, V'nosati l'cholo zaracha acharecha, and I will give to you and to your seed after you, es eretz megurecha, the land of your sojourns, es kol eretz Canaan le'achuzas olam, all the land of Canaan as an everlasting possession, v'hayisi lohem lelohim, and I will be for you as a God. So Rashi says, as an everlasting possession, v'sham, and there, Ehyeh lahem lelohim, I will be a God for them there. Av al hadar b'chutza la'aretz, whoever dwells outside the land of Israel, domeh kami she'ein lo Eloha, is like one who has no God. And the Gemara in Ksubas says there is a unique dimension to Israel's relationship with God when they are in the land of Israel. For God's providence is most intense in the land of Israel. One who lives outside of it does not receive the same degree of divine assistance. And that is quoted by the Gur Aryeh. And this concept, as Abraham being the first Oleh, and he is endowing us, just like he had to uproot. And going back to the origin, to the first posuk of the Sedra, when Hashem says, go to a land that I will show you, we don't have the geographical coordinates of the land of Israel at that point. It is a land that is constantly developing. It is a land where life has to be intrinsically bound up with faith in Hashem, it is that Hashem will show us. And although perhaps as human beings we think we crave certainty, and we think that once we have certainty, then everything will be fine. But perhaps this very enigmatic opening statement of the Sedra, to the land that I will show you, is understanding that there is only one certainty, and that is our faith and our trust in Hashem, because everything else, no matter how steady and secure something might seem at this particular moment, the slightest blip can just overturn it. And I think that now we feel we're living in tumultuous times. We seem to lurch from one crisis to another. There will be COVID, and then various political upheavals in different countries in the world. And we think that if only there would be certainty, then we would be able to feel better. And I think we do need a certain stability in our lives, but the greatest stability we get is understanding that when we are following Hashem's instructions, Hashem will show us, Hashem will give us what we need to know when we need to know it, and really tuning into that faith is our greatest stabilizer, the greatest stabilizer in our life. Whatever we are needing in our personal lives, in our national and global lives, but as long as we are carrying out this mission, and Avraham Avinu is our trailblazer in all the firsts that he has shown us, but that is something that will enable us to have the staying power and the courage to carry on, even when we are going to confront challenges, which we inevitably do. But we are going to get that stability and security from plugging into this concept of the land that I will show you. It's going to be okay. And the intrinsic connection between the God of Israel, the people of Israel, and the land of Israel, that these Pesukim in this week's Sedra are spelling out so very clearly how our relationship with Hashem is different in the land of Israel. And that is something that we have to value and we have to work towards, and realize the blessing of having the land of Israel. And in our times that we have the ability as Jewish people to go and live there, and to live in a land of the Jewish people. And the journey is not yet complete. Hashem is still showing us, but still we have the miracle of that tangible physical presence of a land of Israel in our lives, in a way that most of the generations before us could but dream, and the reality and the existence that they lived was very different. I want to go back to the first pasuk, because this insight that I discovered, heard it from Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, the fascinating understanding of the words that Hashem says in that first pasuk: go out of your land, your birthplace, and the house of your father. And there are many different explanations that are given as to the apparently puzzling order of that, because surely first you leave your home, your father's home, and then you go out of your birthplace, and then you leave your land. And there are various classic explanations about, sometimes people will say it was given in order of difficulty in terms of the wrench, the uprooting. But the idea, and this actually links up with this idea, that all of the nations of the world, all of the families of the world will be blessed through Avraham. And this is in chapter 12, verse 3. V'nivrachu v'cha kol mishpachos ha'adama. And all the families of the world, of the earth, will be blessed through you. And the statistics of Jewish contribution, and it can be in any field, science, look at the proportion of Jewish Nobel Prize winners in all different fields. if we take the total percentage of the world's population that the Jewish people make up, it is a fraction of a percent. We are famously quoted as being less than a statistical bleep in a blip in a population census in China. Yet our contribution to the world has been far out of proportion, to use a fashionable word, disproportionate to our overall to our numbers of the overall population of the world. And looking at these three words, my Artsacha, your land, Moladetcha, your birthplace, and Beis Avicha, the house of your father. So there are three famous Jewish thinkers, and I think all of these three were not Torah observant Jews, in fact, very much the opposite. But they became very widely respected and quoted in the world. And the first that I'm going to talk about here is Karl Marx. And he is considered the founding father of communism. And his theory, very debunked, I would say, by the atrocities that have been committed in the communist ideal. And his theory is that everything depends on whether you are part of the property owning class or not. Anybody who has the property, who owns land, has the power, and invariably abuses, takes advantage of those people who don't have that land. And this theory has been adopted by various political organizations, various nation states, and this, while there is a certain amount of truth that somebody who has material advantage over another person and does not use that fairly can cause terrible suffering to the people who don't have. But this idea that it is a locked state, it is fixed. If you have that property, if you have that ownership of land, you are automatically the top of the food chain, and you will take advantage of the people who don't have it. And then we move on to the next phrase, next word that's used in this sentence: your birthplace, your formative environment, and your peer group, and your family, your genes. So this idea was something that was espoused by Baruch Spinoza, and this theory of pantheism is this an idea that we are locked inside this, where we grow up, our environment, our genes, it's all predetermined and we can't change it. So there's this straitjacket almost, and we are imprisoned by that, and that is our fate. And then the third, Beis Avicha. So the third Jewish thinker is Sigmund Freud, and the connections that Sigmund Freud established between the influence of our parents on the type of human beings that we are, again, not just talking about an influence, but just saying that this is something that we can't break away from, that we are determined by our parents, by our experiences of our parents, and this is our fixed reality. So what Avraham Avinu is doing is he is disproving all of these three theories that we can't be changed. We cannot change our economic reality, that is going to determine how we behave, how we experience our lives, or our peer group, our gene pool. Again, we can't break out of that. Or our parents, we can't change our parents, and therefore we are going to be determined by that. So when Hashem is saying to Avraham Avinu, Lech Lecha, go out, he is telling him that all of these three are very important: our material circumstances, our surroundings, our genes, and also our parents, but we are able to go out of that. We are able to learn, be influenced by it, but there isn't this idea of determinism. Avraham Avinu, the original trailblazer, is showing us that we can expand our horizons. We are not defined by any of these three external realities. And I think it is this particular quality that Avraham is bequeathing to all of us. We have his DNA, and we are able to, to use that as a springboard of confidence and strength to follow Hashem's path and not be chained, as it were, by those three very important aspects of our life, and nobody is denying the centrality of all of these three things at different points in our lives. But equally, Avraham is showing us by responding to Hashem's call to this Lech Lecha that we are able to rise above that. We are able to respond to the call in the appropriate way without being encumbered by any of these preconceived notions. And I think it links up with a very brief reference in last week's Sedra, towards the end of last week's Sedra of Noach. And this is chapter 11, verse 28. And this is just as we have been introduced to Avraham in the previous pasuk. It says Terach lived 70 years and he fathered Avram, Nachor, and Haran. And then in verse 28 it says in chapter 11, Vayamas Haran al Pnei Terach, and Haran died before in the lifetime of his father Terach Aviv, on the lifetime of Terach his father, Be'eretz Moladato Be'or Kasdim, in the land of his birth, in Or Kasdim. And Or Kasdim is the place where, according to the Medrash, this is not written specifically in the words of the Torah, but the concept that Avraham had 10 tests, and the first two, the different commentators actually count this in different ways. But according to some of the commentators, the first two tests come before Lech Lecha. Lech Lecha, the command to uproot and leave his home environment and go to the land that Hashem is going to show him, a land of the promised land. But the first two tests were actually at the time of Nimrod, when Avraham Avinu had to go into hiding to evade Nimrod, who was very concerned about this troublemaker who was trying to wean people away from idol worship and get them to believe in the one true God. And the second test was being thrown into the fiery furnace at Ur Kasdim, because when Avraham Avinu finally confronts Nimrod and is told by Nimrod that either he has to relinquish his belief or be thrown into the fiery furnace, Avraham Avinu says to Nimrod he is not going to relinquish his belief in the truth. So he is thrown into a furnace and he emerges miraculously unscathed from this furnace. And that is considered, according to some, the 10th of the 10 tests that Avraham Avinu went through. And Haran, his brother, when he saw that Avraham went in to this furnace and emerged unscathed, he actually went in as well. But he was burned, he died in this furnace. And that is the allusion to the verse that I said, that I just read out. And this was how Haran died during the lifetime of his father. And the question is, how does Avraham then, as he would be known then at that point, how does he emerge unscathed? And why wasn't Haran why didn't he experience the same kind of delivery? So I think that it is because of Abraham's ability to not be confined by the mindsets that restrict us, that will say, I can't, no, I come from a certain place, I behave in a certain way, it's my nature, it's my culture. And because Avraham Avinu was able to get over that, because his faith in Hashem was his overriding reality. And the thing is that even if he would have physically been burned and reduced to ashes in that furnace, his essence was his belief in Hashem. And that is something that's indestructible. So any of us physically are potentially destructible, but it is that essence. And when we are able to tap into that essence, we can succeed, we can survive, we can do things that are beyond a physical reality. And this is not something that is a fairy tale on the one hand, but equally it's not something that you can say with certainty, I would never endure, I would be able to go into a furnace and not be burned. We don't know that we have the levels of faith that are required to achieve the result that happened to Avraham Avinu. But the idea, and this is something that we are able to aspire to from the point of learning about what happened in Ur Kasdim according to the Medrash. And in our Sedra, from this idea of Lech Lecha, of how we are tapping into a DNA of our ancestor, and we are able in this way to understand that when we believe in Hashem, our mission is to be Hashem's servant, to follow in the ways of Hashem, and then whatever other theories and whatever other limitations we might think apply to us, that's not the case at all. And I think that this is a very clear lesson that we learn from the trailblazer of Avraham Avinu, and we see that this legacy, this concept of not being constrained by a material reality, by a genetic or by relationships within the family. This is actually something that can benefit all of humanity. And one of the ways that perhaps when we say all the families of the world will be blessed through Avraham, that knowing this, knowing that we have that freedom to be our true selves, this is one of the greatest legacies that we get from Avraham Avinu. So thank you very much. And really always an ongoing discovery of new things. And really, this is a living, breathing Torah that enriches our daily lives. And we just have to make that effort to work at it and try to understand it and discover those new things. Thank you very much for listening, and wishing everybody Shabbat Shalom.